name's Jason Held. I'll be your session track chair today. Very simple. Most of the speakers have 15 minutes, including Q&A. So we'll give them a 10-minute warning on the little bell when they start running a bit late. I'm actually really excited about this track because what we're seeing in Australia is a change in the way we do business in space. And that change is really driven by the market, not by government, not by anything else other than our own ingenuity. So we're looking at, I think it was tracking about 35 new space companies just in the last year and a half alone. And these companies, they track across the entire spectrum of what we need to do to have a supply chain in space. You've got launch providers, you've got satellite engineers, mission operators, things like that. So that's the whole supply chain you need to do a space mission. So those of you who are academic, technical people, when you're watching these presentations, I just thought I'd let you know that you judge them a little bit differently than you would an academic presentation, right? So academic presentation results is more in a scientific sense, showing the data that you can do things. From an entrepreneurial sense, the results are a little bit more abstract. It has to do with whether you can get customers, whether you can be survivable. Customers is really the best evidence that you have a business that's survivable. Investment is also important, and it's interesting because a third of all of these startups have investment already. So putting that into context, Australia, without any space program whatsoever, has 35 startups. India, which is the 6th largest space economy in the world, a country of over 1.5 billion people, has 6 space startups for their entire country. Right, so Southeast Asia, we're kind of leading the pack in this regard. All right, so without further ado, I want to introduce Stuart McAndrew from OzQube-1, who's on Skype as Maximus with us now. Stuart, take it away.
Okay. Can you all see me okay?
Hold on, Stuart, just one second.
We can see you, but we're trying to work with the volume a bit.
Okay. Is it better?
Can you guys hear him in the back?
No.
Not really.
Just need to get that voice.
Oh, hello.
Hey, Stuart.
Try again.
Try now? Is it now good?
Yeah, that's better. That's better. All right, thumbs up. Take it away.
Okay, all right. So yes, my name's Stuart McAndrew. I'm just going to give you a quick rundown on my project, which is called OzQube-1. So I'm just going to hide my face here and go through the slides, and then I'll be able to talk again a little bit afterwards. So what is OzQube-1 and what is the mission? So OzQube-1 is a single unit PocketQube satellite. So its main mission objective is to, well, firstly, successfully operate in space. So the platform's a tech demonstrator. So being a sort of a custom satellite, you need to have all the different subsystems. So this satellite is a completely custom, so all the different subsystems need to work together to work successfully. So that's the first objective. The second one is to capture photos of Australia from space. So as a sort of a public outreach kind of mission, it's photos were just an area where I thought that people can relate to. You know, people use photos on Instagram and Facebook and things like that. So being able to have something that was made in Australia and capturing photos of Australia would sort of bridge the gap between sort of space and I guess the general. And the other aim is to obviously transmit those images down to the ground, because it's no good capturing them on a spacecraft. You know, you need to spread the word around and transmit them down to the ground. So the idea is that you can use a fairly low-cost receiver to be able to receive these images, and they'll be sort of transmitted all around the world. And hopefully, it'll just inspire people about space and get people interested in small satellites. So, PocketQube, a lot of you may have heard what a PocketQube is, but in case there's anyone in the room that doesn't, it's a single unit PocketQube is 5 by 5 by 5 centimeters. So it was a concept that was created by Bob Twiggs, who's also the co-creator of the CUBESAT form factor. And one of the benefits of having something smaller is that it's cheaper to launch, cheaper to get into space. but also because it's simpler, it actually accelerates your development time. Turns out if it's just you developing the satellites, it takes a while, but if you had a team sort of working on it, you can get it, I guess, working a lot quicker than you can a larger, more complex satellite. And so the OzQube-1 project started early in 2014, and so that was not long after the first batch of PocketQubes were launched, which was in November 2013. So at the moment, there's 4 PocketQubes in space, and one of which was $50 sat. That actually managed to last for about 18 months in space. So, it's not something that's going to only work for 2 weeks. These things can be as useful as CubeSats. So just a little bit more background about me. I was actually sort of inspired by these first batch of PocketQubes. And so I was sort of part of the community that helped to develop this electrical standard for PocketQubes. Whereas CubeSats use the PC104 standard, being so new, PocketQubes needed something to sort of standardise on so that you could build parts that would work with something that someone else around the other side of the world has built. So we developed this PQ60, which was a community-developed sort of standard for PocketQubes. And so these PocketQubes, as I said, were a big inspiration for mine. $50 sat. By the name, you can sort of suggest they thought that it was going to cost $50 to build, but it turns out that satellites do cost more than $50. I presented at the last CubeSat workshop there in Sydney 2 years ago. That was sort of the cover slide for my presentation then, so I've incorporated a little bit more graphics this time. But yeah, there's a lot you can learn in 2 years, especially when building satellites. And so I thought I'll just give a bit of a rundown on what's inside the satellite and just describe some of the changes that have taken place since sort of the early concept. So I guess starting from the outside, which is actually sort of where the development of the satellite started. The original concept was to use the triangular cells on the left there, the spectral task cells. But as I sort of got into trying to source parts for it, I found that these were discontinued, they weren't available anymore. And so I had to move on to something else. So the second picture there is the first prototype sort of test solar panel. So that's actually using some small cells that were similar to one of the ones used on one of the first PocketQubes. The problem was that they revised the design, they had a different laminate on board, so they weren't sort of space qualified, they hadn't been proven, and I didn't need to go through a whole bunch of testing really to make sure that they were suitable. But the other problem is that they're only monocrystalline silicon, they're only 22% efficient, so not exactly the best when you've got a really limited area for power generation. So as it turns out, there was a replacement for the triangular cells, and that's the curved ones there in the third picture. They're the Trisol X wings. So they're actually offcuts from Azure Space 28% efficient cells. And so that's the design of one of the end panels for the PocketQube. But as I discovered that mounting solar panels, you need to sort of take a bit of care about how you mount them into the chassis. So I found I had to redesign. Was going to have to redesign that panel. So the last picture on the end is the same wings as they're called, but with the top trimmed off, because the very outside edge of this circle is not doesn't generate any power. So the manufacturer now supplies them with the edge trimmed off, and that lets you squeeze a few more in. And so I redesigned my solar panels to take that into account to try and maximise the amount of power that I was going to generate with really small solar panels. Next up is the structure. So, as you know, with CubeSats, you can either buy something off the shelf or you can design the structure yourself. Being fairly limited with resources, the hardware shop was my first port of call, but it turns out that the aluminium you get in hardware stores really isn't designed for space. It's not the right size, it's not the right strength, but it was good just to sort of get an idea about how things fit together and how things sort of can attach to the material. So if you've never sort of worked with that kind of material before, it's good to just do some basic tests. So even as simple as putting threads in the material and trying to pull the screws out just to see sort of the kind of strength, they're sort of useful early on. But as I went on, as I said, I had to redesign the solar panels to try and mount properly and fit in. So I actually used a 3D printer to help me do some prototyping. So the picture there in the middle is just a sort of a fit check of the chassis around the outside, which will be aluminium, and some little brackets that can help sort of mount things. And that's actually sort of a representation of how the boards are going to sit inside the satellite. And so the version there on the right is sort of where I'm at the moment. Turns out the material that I'm using is an extruded aluminium, but you can't buy that grade of aluminium here in Australia, so I had to source it from overseas, actually from the United Kingdom. So I've got a friend over there who's machining that chassis up for me, because it's easy for him to buy a 6 metre length of aluminium, and it costs a fortune to send it over here. Alright, just into the electronics. I'm building out a space Arduino, as I call it. So at the moment, the main command and data handling module, the main computer is an Arduino, the ATmega 328B processor microcontroller. So I've added to that just a few sort of useful things that you need in satellites, like a real-time clock, which is really useful for scheduling when you're going to take photos. There's some power management in there for single event upsets, so that way I can completely remove the power in case it locks up. So that's incorporated with the watchdog timer. Storage for the pictures is going to be a combination of micro SD card and ferroelectric RAM. The frame is actually very radiation tolerant, so certain key sort of variables for the configuration will be stored in there, and they'll be resistant to the radiation. So I can compare that with what's going on in the actual microcontroller itself, which is just flash-based. There is a 9-axis IMU in there. Obviously, all 9 aren't going to be any use to me in space, but they're just there for logging data. So I'll be able to determine, through the telemetry, I'll be able to determine rotation rates and things like that. But unfortunately, the microcontroller is probably a little bit small. Most other satellites tend to use something a little bit more powerful, but I'm going to see how I go with trying to incorporate what I want in this, but I may have to do a little bit of an upgrade. Stabilisation on the satellite, I haven't got a picture of this, but it's, I call it passive magnetic stabilisation, which means it's just got a couple of magnets glued on board. And so I'll just flip back a slide there. If you see the slots on the right-hand chassis there, so the magnet's going to be attached in there. And that will actually align with Earth's magnetic field, and the effect will be that the camera will be pointing down over Australia there, so that's how I'm going to actually make sure I take photos of Australia. Oops.
Hey Stuart, sorry to interrupt. You got about 3 minutes, including questions.
Yep, okay, no worries. So comms is an off-the-shelf radio module. It actually has a 1 watt output, so it's quite a lot of power in such a small package. Uses FSK modulation and a sort of custom packet format, which takes advantage of the hardware on the transceiver. And that'll be accessible to radio amateurs or anyone around the world. And there will be certain open uplinks for ham operators to be able to sort of initiate certain transmissions. Quickly on the power side of things, it's actually a full custom design, as I said. It's got a lot of features like the bigger CUBESAT brethren. It's got multiple maximum power point tracking and battery controller and switch current limiters and all those kind of things. So big hole in the middle, and that's really there because there's a camera lens pointing through the middle. So it's a little 32 by 32 millimeter camera module with a couple of upgrades. So I've upgraded the lens mount and the lens itself. It's a fairly simple camera, but the 2 megapixels sort of gives a bit of an upgrade to some of the previous VGA cameras that have been on CUBESAT. So the GST is about 54 meters per pixel, about 600 kilometers. And just some of the spin-offs from developing the satellite, started up a company called CUBESAT Systems. So we're, I guess, making things, we've got small sat applications. So what can OzQube-1 and the platform OzQube-1 be used for? So we're looking at where that can be used for commercial or scientific purposes. I met my co-founder Conrad's there today. I think he presented for the OSU earlier. And so yeah, the other thing that we're doing is a development tool called EduCube. So EduCube is this thing here. It's sort of it's another little Arduino-based platform. It's I guess designed for it's like a training platform. So if you want to build a satellite, you start on something that's a bit simpler. So you learn how to interface the sensors, interface the radios, and things like that. So it's aimed at high schools, unis, and really anyone else who wants to sort of get started in building satellites. So if anyone's interested, follow the project on all the social medias. I've got a blog where I sort of write random ramblings, and if you want to help from the launch, please donate.
Okay.
That's it.
Thank you. One or two questions?
Just a quick comment, Stuart. Conrad is here. Can you stand up, Conrad? Conrad has with him an example of the little cube.
So this is the
EduCube. If you want to have a look at that, you can have a talk to him later.
Great, great. Any questions? No questions. I got one quick one for you then. What type of a customer are you going for the little cubes as opposed to the CubeSat itself, the mini cubes?
So the one that Conrad's got, the EduCube, which is sort of it's sort of called the EduCube, is sort of the satellite that's based in the classroom.
Sure.
So that's sort of
like high school or undergraduate?
Sorry.
So are you talking high school or undergraduate?
So I guess a bit of both. So for high school, I guess for the entry level, you need to have it's sort of a science. It's a STEM tool. So like RGSat in America, they've got a platform that's Arduino based. It's in a CubeSat form factor, but they have a whole bunch of science experiments that you can run using the sensors on the platform. So from a high school perspective, we sort of run through some prescribed examples or experiments to run. But as you go on to sort of the high school, the senior high school, you can start, I guess, using it as a platform to be able to transmit telemetry from a balloon or attach it to a small rocket and things like that. So that's where the EduCube sort of comes in. The OzQube platform, I guess, is the space-going platform. So whereas I've got the camera payload, that can be replaced with something else, or the camera payload can be used. And so I guess that's where we're looking at using the OzQube platform.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you for your time. That's it. I think we'll move on to the next speaker, and we have.